Aloha, welcome to Blossom Inner Wellness. I'm Michelle Melendez, and I'm super excited to be interviewing today a 50-year nurse, registered nurse practitioner, Johnette Kiso. And she actually was a registered nurse close to where I grew up in the Northern California area. And Jeanette, I'm just really excited to have you here. Thanks for joining us.
I'm very happy to be here.
So this conversation that we're having is about, and we're not going to say the C word, we're just going to call
There
it
you
the
go.
C word and the V word and the jab, however you want to say it. But I'm curious, when this situation first started happening back in March of 2020, what were your thoughts? Actually, let's start with your background first. Let's start with your background. You've been a nurse practitioner, registered nurse for 50
Registered nurse.
years.
Mhm.
Where did you practice and what did you practice, and tell us more about that.
I began my schooling in Sacramento, California, started the nursing school in 1970. So my registered license is actually 49, but I was practicing now for 51 years as a student on up to license in the Sacramento area. And I stayed there for quite a while, married uh, around 1995, and we started moving up the Sierras to actually end up in South Lake Tahoe. And so I worked in hospitals along that Highway 50 corridor between Sacramento and South Lake Tahoe.
Awesome.
My specialties are heart surgery, heart related things, home health, and hospice. And so I spent a great deal of time in the hospital doing various things. I floated to pediatrics, OB, geriatrics, the med surg floor, the hospice floor, whatever. Didn't spend a lot of time in OB, didn't spend a lot of time in pediatrics, but I do have experience in those areas. But my favorites were heart and home health and hospice. Those were my favorite areas. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, thank you. And it takes a very special person to do hospice. So thank you so much for being one of those special people. So tell us about this when things started happening back in March of 2020, and we were told about a pandemic, and we were told about the ways to keep yourself safe. What were your thoughts when this first came up?
My first thought happened for about 1 week, and that was, oh my, um, hmm, maybe I should make some things to go over my face and help people out and show them how to use them. So if this is real, maybe I should do that. And so I
Mm.
did. I made about 15 or 20 of them because I like to sew. And so I made them with the little pockets so you could put a filter in it, and started, as I handed it out to people, I instructed them on the proper use of it so that it would be effective, and told them the length of time that it would be effective, 15 to 20 minutes.
Oh, okay.
So
So tell us, because you just said something. You just said you created a mask with a filter. What does that look like? So it's not a regular cloth mask that just goes over your face. What was the filter? What did that look like?
the filter wasn't anything particular. It was just something to be able to change when it gets moist. And if you want to wear a mask a longer period of time, you need to have a filter that you can change out, because the CDC tells us once it gets wet, it's of no use. Well, our breath is moist, and so if you breathe for about 15 to 20 minutes, the mask is now moist. And I'm sure that you have experienced that when you have taken yours off and felt it after you've
Mm,
had it on for an hour, or going shopping, and and there's it's moist and maybe even a little stinky, and so that it's useless after that, and
yeah.
so it doesn't last long. So a filter does help out to increase the length of time, though still you really shouldn't be wearing those things longer than about a half an hour at any given time, and replacing them with a new one in order to keep yourself protected. So I was doing that instruction for that first week, and then the second week that this was going on, I started hearing some other stuff going on about staying home and distancing that, that came in. And I started seeing people misuse those masks horribly, sticking them on their visor and
Mhm.
sticking them in their purses, their pockets, and then putting them back on. And I went around and said, "You're doing it all wrong. It's not going to work. If you want to protect yourself, you have to maintain this."
Mhm.
And he didn't. And they kind of looked at me like, and didn't say anything. The third week, I'm coming around and I'm still trying to get them to understand. And they start arguing with me. At least I'm wearing one. At least I'm doing this. At least I'm doing that. And so they started arguing with me. And then I sat back as I'm sitting back in my chair going, something's wrong here. And then, the experience I've had with nursing, I started going through all the scenarios of the history of health and the practice of hospitals and gag orders, and only being able to have the PR person be able to say what's going on in the hospital, and closing hospitals down so nobody can get in, and practicing that. And that was back in the 2000s, late 90s, 2000s, that these practices were going on. And I was part of them, and I was partly supervisor. So I was one of the ones that would go around to the nurses and saying, make sure you're not talking to anybody. Make sure you're, this is a practice thing, but treat it as it's real. And the hospital I was working at the time purchased thousands of dollars of biohazard PPEs, the personal protective equipment, in order to do that. We got police, fire, uh, 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 churches, everybody got involved in this practice. And we'd have mock drills once or twice a year for the time I was at this particular hospital. And the nurses who forgot to say nothing, they were actually put on probation. It was that serious that they were practicing this. So
So
go
when
ahead.
was this again? When did this start?
Late 90s, early 2000s.
And did
But
they
it
tell you
actually,
why?
yes, they were concerned that there would be bioweapons. They were concerned that there would be pandemics. They were concerned that there would be, and they couched it in other things like, what would we do if there was a disaster? This is a mountain town we're in. What would we do if there was a disaster, if there was a major accident, like, one of the big boats sinking and there's people in this cold, frigid water and have to rescue them. We actually got high schoolers involved and painted them up, with bruises and fractures and splints and all kinds of stuff. It's kind of fun,
Yeah.
but all of
Disaster
that started
scenario.
coming back. Yes, all that started coming back into my mind of, wait a minute, we've been practicing this for a long time, and and it even goes back farther in the early 80s, late 70s. There's a phone call that was coming. In the early 80s, I think it was, there was this thing called DRGs. Have you ever heard of those?
Mhm.
They're called diagnostic related groupings. Two things happened. One was diagnostic related groupings came on with insurance companies, which wanted to give incentives to hospitals to save money. And so they'd group diagnoses into categories, and they would pay the hospital a certain amount for that diagnosis. Like 3 days in the hospital, they'd pay for it. If you got the patient out in 2 days, you would still get paid for 3 days. So it's an incentive to all the nurses to really do good care. And I got on board. I was going to be an excellent nurse and get these, low complications, and that happened along with the insurance companies went on the stock market. They were no longer nonprofit.
Oh, man.
And that bothered me because now they have to make money. And the diagnostic related groupings actually made them money, because if a person stayed in the hospital 4 days instead of 3 for a 3-day pay, the hospitals still got 3 days of pay for that patient. So
Oh.
there, so it was it was an incentive to get the patients out, and the progression of that was that those who were on the med-surg floors were actually put out into homes. Home care industry skyrocketed.
Oh, I see.
Those who were in the ICUs ended up on the floors. So the nurses are taking care of very sick patients on the floors. The ones that died are now in the ICUs. And so it's very, very sick people in the hospitals. And what would be considered med-surg floor patients are now out in the home. And that's how the hospitals progressed. So if you're in the ICU in the early 70s, you wouldn't have been there. You would have been dead because of the technology, and that it went much better in this beginning in the 70s and 80s there. And so that was going on. And then the disaster preparedness, and then the talk about bioweapons and pandemics and that were all, almost 20 years ago. The other thing that was going on too is the thing called the chip. And that started with the military. They wanted to be able to chip military people to be able to, if they were out on the field and they needed care, they could have a chip in their skin where they would get up their medical equipment and their medical information really quickly on the field and be able to take care of them. And so they studied where they could put a chip so it would migrate, so they could find it in the person. And it was on the forehead and right here on your hand, where it wouldn't migrate. And so all of that, my mind went through that third week that this whole thing started out, went through that. And then the last thing that really I started shouting, no, was when the churches folded. And that First Amendment right to exercise freedom of speech,
Yeah.
freedom of assembly. I almost went ballistic at that point. But I also started to take a look at that people here in Hawaii especially were not getting sick.
Yeah.
We had low levels.
Yeah.
So whatever they were doing with the masks and the destruction of those, the problem of misuse of those masks was not showing up with increased numbers. So
No.
I was looking at those two things.
Yeah, we've had there's been over 30,000 cases. Most people in the whole state of Hawaii, 33 I think now, thousand, but most people are not showing any symptoms, including the lieutenant governor who had a positive case test, but he didn't have any symptoms. He actually went to a radio station and had an interview before I think it was before or after his test. It was within hours of taking his test that was positive. There was our chief of fire here on the Big Island. I believe it was him. I'm not positive, but I believe it was a police fire chief that had a positive case, no symptoms. So many people, no symptoms. The regular flu, we've had 491 deaths as of May 15th, 2021. Okay. The last year, so that's 14 months. The last year, the regular flu killed over 500 people. The year before that, the regular flu killed over 600. Both heart disease and cancer are each almost over 5 times as deadly as the COVID in the state of Hawaii. The state of Hawaii has the lowest COVID deaths in all 50 states. And yet 29 states have lifted COVID restriction or mask restrictions, except for here on our amazing state of Hawaii. And when
Mm.
this started back in March, I've been a fitness trainer for 20 years. And at first, so you took 1 week, I took 2 weeks. I took two
Okay.
weeks. And I had a mask for just a very short time, and then I got a shield because I just couldn't deal.
Sure.
I was getting really anxiety putting a mask on my face. I have a little bit of claustrophobia, and putting that mask on was like heightening up the sense of claustrophobia for me. So I was putting a shield on, and I cut the eyes out. And I'm thinking to myself, this is a little bit ridiculous because I got my eyes cut out. I got the shield. I'm able to breathe fresh air, coming in and out. I'm not doing the hand sanitizer because we'll talk about that in a second, because your body, for
Right.
you guys watching, is mostly bacteria. You have more bacteria on your body than you do cells, and it's good. And you need good bacteria
Right.
to stay healthy. So I knew not to do that. And then after like going into Costco and seeing all these people walking around, I'm like, this is ridiculous. I was like, this is not keeping people healthy. And it started I started going, what's really going on? And that's that. So it took me 2 weeks. I'm glad it took you only one. Um, that's amazing. And so talking about bacteria and the hand sanitizers, let's talk a little bit about that. What are your thoughts on that with all the hand sanitizers in front of the stores, which is like, it's like, oh, you guys are literally poisoning yourselves. Like this guy, I was doing a health summit at this park, and this guy was spraying disinfectant that kills bacteria. And I told him, I said, you are poisoning the tables that children eat on. And he goes, no, I'm just spraying disinfectant. But he didn't understand what he was doing, because that is poison. It is literally
Right.
poison. So what are your thoughts on that?
Well, they did some studies in the hospitals, and the antibacterial soap started coming into fashion. And so there was things like Hubiclens and chlorhexidine, and then just antibacterial soaps that were being put into the hospitals because they thought, well, maybe that's the best thing to do. What they were finding was that superbugs were being mutated. And so we started seeing MRSA and MRSE
What is that?
and necrotizing fasciitis and things that antibiotics can't kill. So we started seeing that. And I haven't been in the hospital setting since 2008. I've been just advocating for patients since 2008, and actually called myself retired. Kept my license active, but I ended up being in the community and not getting paid for for helping out, and decided to come out of retirement just a few months ago, just because even in the homes, insurance companies are not taking care of, especially this area of Ka'u. They don't come here. There's one agency that can't deal with skilled care for veterans. Another agency that can, but won't come past Captain Cook or Volcano. That leaves all of Ka'u completely void of skilled care. And so I'm doing a lot of free work in the homes for especially veterans and other people. I'm still getting paid for a little bit of stuff, but that's another issue that's going on with insurance companies trying to stop taking care of these people and creating more and more restrictions. So I don't know where I was going with that, but the disinfectants
Yeah.
in the hospital, they started. See, I was a nurse before liquid soap. We just
Wow.
had bar soap,
Yeah.
and we didn't have nosocomial infections. You know what those are? That's
Yeah.
nurse spread infections.
Oh.
Nurses can spread infections. It's called cross contamination.
Mhm.
And so we kept patients from getting contaminated with bar soap.
Yeah.
We knew how to do it. You wash the soap, and then you rinse the soap, and you rinse your hands, and then you put some more soap on. You rinse the soap again and put it in its tray, and you finish washing your hands, and you turn off the faucet with a paper towel, a dry one.
Yeah.
After you dried your hands. So the water's running this whole time, which is very hard to do in many situations, especially in KAU, because we are on catchment tanks. So
Yeah.
everybody's conserving water. So even that,
Yeah.
people's
For those of
hands
you
are,
who don't, I just want to tell you, for those of you who don't know, yeah, they catch water. It's rainwater. So they don't
yes,
have city water. So that's why that's harder to do. But go ahead.
right. Yeah, because we conserve, we turn our water off immediately. So the hospitals started using these things, but the nurses were starting to get cracks in their hands and actually starting to get infections because the antibacterial soaps that were actually removing that nice barrier, that skin
Mm-hmm.
barrier we have that has a little bacteria on it, but not enough. It's not colonized enough to spread.
Mm-hmm.
And that brings another issue of colonization. This idea that you can be asymptomatic and spread that particular virus is a lie. It has to do with colonization. How much do you have in you before you start to exude it out of your skin, out of your breath, out of your, secretions?
Mm-hmm.
If there's not enough, like you said, we have bacteria all over our bodies. And most things are spread by indirect contact. I touch something and remove my hand, and you go touch that same something and remove your hand. You now have the bacteria that I had on my hand on yours,
Yeah.
just by touching indirectly, that indirect. And that's how most things are spread.
And this is also why this was like cracking me up with the masks.
Yes.
Because here I
Yes.
am in the store and they got the touchpad. And I'm like,
Yes.
this is way more, a possibility of me spreading anything than my
And
freaking mask.
You're
Oh my
constantly
gosh.
touching it just to your mask.
And then the gas station, went to the gas station and the guy is standing there. The gas pumps are like 12 feet from each other. And the guy at the gas station tells me to put a mask on my face. And I said, no. I said, this is the United States of America. We're outside. This is not a communist country. I have the right to breathe fresh air. And then he comes closer and I'm like, oh, you're not 6 feet. You're not 6 feet. I'm like, why? I said, do you even know? I said, aren't you afraid for your life? I'm like, you're going to die. You're not 6 feet from me. And then this other person goes, I hear this other person on the other side of the gas. Tell him, lady. Because I'm like, this is ridiculous. You want me to put a mask on, but yet I can grab the pump with my hand and I can touch the keypad that everybody who's gone through this pump has touched and nobody is saying anything about that. It was just like, I'm just like, where people just don't know. People just don't know. And it's a plan that way. And I don't want to say common sense because this is not common. Like people, if you're not taught this,
Right.
in
Right.
your industry that you work in, we're not taught it in schools. So
Yeah.
it's like it's easy for people to be manipulated because they're not aware of this stuff. So I love that you
And
brought that up.
fear takes a great big piece of this
Yeah.
whole thing. If
Yes.
I'm afraid enough, I'll do anything to protect my health, my family, my parents. I'll do anything if fear is big
Absolutely.
enough. And that was really a good component that I'll call it good, not that it's good, but it was a huge component of this whole thing.
Yeah.
But let's get back to the sanitizing.
Yes.
The more you use antibacterial, antiviral things, the more likely, if you don't do a complete job, the more likely you are to produce mutated germs. And this brings in the superbugs. And we have, over time, since we've been using antibacterial, antiviral things in the name of trying to keep people healthy,
And safe.
we have produced some really huge, very deadly superbugs of infections for people. And I'm dealing with one that right now I'm just really doing what we call palliative care with him. There's nothing I can do, and there's nothing the hospital is going to be able to do to save that particular area of his skin, because there's not antibiotics. It'll slow it down, but it won't ever get rid of it. And I'm watching that particular part of his body slowly die.
Mm.
and there's nothing I can do. And
Is it
if I
his
say
hand? Like where is it?
it, well, in order to keep some privacy, I'll not
Oh,
tell where it's at.
got it.
But because many people know,
Got it.
we
No
know
worries.
everybody in Ka'u, so
Yeah,
I want to keep that a little bit.
no worries.
Anyway, the spraying of the chemicals in the air and in the stores are actually causing increase in pneumonias, asthma attacks, and toxins that are actually dropping immune systems, and then people are getting sick.
Yeah.
And
Yes.
I actually had an experience 2 days ago. It was 2 days ago. I went shopping, and they were spraying stuff all over the place in the air.
Oh,
And we finally had to ask one person, we're eating here, can you please stop spraying that? And they
yeah.
don't learn that. Even landscapers know to stop their blowing when you're walking by, and they
Yeah.
do that. And that's part of their work, is to make sure that they don't create an environment for people to get sick in.
Yeah.
But they're not teaching these people who are sanitizing the place. And they're using very, very caustic chemicals. Well, just the 2 or 3 hours that I was shopping in Kona, I came back, and I don't have asthma, but I know
Mhm.
what that's like because I did. I was completely healed of that. Haven't had any problems with inhalers or anything like that in probably 20 years. But I was finding myself feeling asthmatic
Mhm.
after that experience. Yes, 2 days ago. And I actually choked on my secretions because my lungs hadn't quite reopened by last night when I was doing a Facebook Live meeting that I was doing with people.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I had, the last of it was me coughing, choking, and I'll see you later. But that's very dangerous. I'm more concerned about that than the silly masks that people are touching, because apparently it didn't get anybody sick, really, majorly. It did the person that was wearing the mask. They've had several instances of pneumonias in the hospital, but they're not attributing it to mask wearing.
Gosh. Yeah, I was in a store up north, and the person was spraying the disinfectant. It said disinfectant. It was a spray, and I was leaving, and she was spraying as I was leaving, and I inhaled it, and I was just
Mm-hmm.
like, oh my gosh. As soon as I got in the car, I could just feel scratchy, very, very discomfort, like not able to breathe as well, and I knew that it was that disinfectant spray. So if you guys are watching this, please know and that's the other thing too, is that we have an immune system. We have a
Mm-hmm.
God-given immune system. This body was created to heal itself
Mm-hmm.
from the creator that created this body. Hardly at all has the media ever said any ways to boost your immune system. I mean, a little bit about vitamin
Yeah.
D3, vitamin C, sunshine, but my gosh, if that is not a huge indicator that something is wrong,
Sure.
why isn't the media talking about boost your immune system, your God-given immune system of your body that heals itself from the inside out? Vitamin
Mm-hmm.
D3, vitamin C, sunshine, connection with people actually helps to
Mm-hmm.
boost your immune system. Hugs help to boost your immune
Yes.
system.
Yes.
Good
Yes.
clean water. What else? What else would you recommend to boost your immune system?
Well, I'd like to go back to the hugs, because I think that was a very essential part. And part of Hawaii is the aloha. And
Yes.
I learned from the Hawaiians that it's forehead to forehead. You breathe each other's breath.
Yeah.
And if you don't do the forehead to forehead, that's where the word haole came from. Haole came from, no breath. And when the first missionaries came, they handed out their hand to shake the Hawaiians' hands.
Mm.
And that's the first thing the Hawaiians said, haole, no breath. We didn't touch foreheads and breathe each other's breath. Healthy people who hug, there's a little bit of an exchange of germs, just a little, and your immune system is perked up. You don't do that. There are orphanages in Romania that were filled when the communists took over and the country closed. There was a time where it opened up, post-communism, and my daughter got to go to some of those orphanages that they had several orphanages of little babies, and they didn't cry. Because they weren't being held. And their job as this group of youth came to the orphanages was just to hold the babies, hug them, touch them, because there's a thing called failure to thrive that every nurse looks for in an infant that comes into the hospital. If they're not crying, if they're not afraid, if they're not fearful of your touch, of your, what you're doing, and they want their mommy, and if they're doing all those things, those are normal reactions because they've been hugged, they've been touched, and it, it's a little snap. I just call it a little snap of a boost to the immune system when you hug. And I don't know if it's unofficial as far as statistics, but it takes 12 hugs a day for you to thrive. And so very important. And in the beginning of last March 2020, after I saw that, number one, the masks were useless, so that can't be helping to not spread the COVID. Oops.
That's okay.
Sorry about that. That can't be the object of preventing spread. People sanitizing, that was a joke, because the minute they'd sanitize, they'd wipe their nose or they'd wipe their, something on there. Putting on a mask, they contaminated the mask and their hands immediately, because you're supposed to wash your hands after you put a mask on. So I don't know do you want me to demonstrate?
Yeah.
Correct use? Okay, I have one of these masks. I don't wear them very often because they're filled with toxins as well, and they're carcinogenic.
Especially those plastic ones. That's why I tell people who have those plastic ones, that one, because they actually breathe in plastic particles into. Right. I said, if you're going to wear it, wear a cotton one, and you need to replace it often.
Often, right. So you're not supposed to touch this part of your mask at all. You're supposed to only touch the earpieces, and you put it on around your ears. Now, what have you just touched? You've touched your one of the dirtiest spots in your body is behind your ears.
Oh.
You don't touch anything but the nose and the very bottom piece to put it around there. And then you go wash your hands and you don't touch it again. This is the correct use of a mask.
And then how long is that gonna be able to and keep, and that's the goal is to keep you from getting a virus.
No, it won't take care of viruses. It'll take care of droplets. I'm going to take this off because but you've touched the back of your ears, and you've pinched around here. So you haven't touched this area, because if you touch this area, you put your bacteria on the mask from your hands. And now when it gets moist and concentrated with your bacteria on the inside, you get bacteria in the inside, bacteria on the outside, your mouth is pretty dirty. And now you're breathing unhindered because it's moist. Yeah. All that collection of bacteria that you had on your hands from other people, from other situations, from the back of your ears, it's breathing freely out and in. Because once something gets moist, bacteria, viruses, germs can flow freely. They're not hindered in any way. And so, these only last, maybe they're made a little better. They said something about a waterproof side, and I think I even put it on backwards. I can't remember. I hate these things. Yeah. That it might last a little bit longer. So I'd always tell people, well, your mask is good for about a half an hour, and then you're done. Then whatever's out in the air is for you. And if you
why did you say not viruses? That will not help against viruses.
Because they're too small.
The viruses are too small.
Yeah, and this package here
It
used to
says,
say will
yeah.
not. It doesn't anymore.
Oh,
Did
it
you know
doesn't.
that? We removed it. Yes. It used to say will not protect you from coronavirus. It actually said that on the box. And
I
I,
remember that. I remember that.
yeah, do you remember that? Okay. Yeah, but it's no longer there. What it says is um, the product is a disposable product. Do not use if packaging is damaged or moisture. And if there's redness, swelling, itching after usage, please stop using it and consult your physician. Stay away from fire. Device should be stored in a dry room with excellent ventilation and without caustic gases. The device should not be used over 24 hours. Discard the used disposable according to local regulations.
Wow.
So they're talking about making sure that you don't use it if it's moist. And again, it gets moist in about 15 to 20 minutes.
Does it say what's it used for? This mask is used for, or does it not say that?
Used to protect mouth, nose, and chin at a public area, which is completely different than what it used to be. So they have
Yeah, I remember.
reworded this.
At a public area. So it doesn't even say protect against viruses. It doesn't say
No.
bacteria. It doesn't say any of that. So how interesting, how interesting. So the
So when
last
we were in
thing,
the hospital,
or go
yeah, I
ahead.
just want to tell you, when we're in
Yeah.
the hospital, masks, that's why they told people not to buy the masks and not to hoard them because they needed them in the hospitals. There are things that happen in hospitals where you need masks.
Yeah.
And, so we would use these masks for a few minutes. While it was dry, it can protect from droplets and from not from airborne stuff. And the only thing that I know of is tuberculosis that is
Yeah.
lighter than air.
That's right.
The
That's
rest,
right. I
the
remember that.
rest of them are by droplet or by contact, and because it falls to the ground, it's too heavy. So that's as far as I remember. And we would put the mask on, we'd wash our hands, we'd go into the room, whether it would be somebody who we were protecting us from or protecting them from us. We would go in, we'd limit our time there to 15 to 20 minutes. If we had to spend a longer time, we'd come out, remask, rewash our hands, and go back in.
Wow.
Do you see nurses? Do you see nurses changing their masks that often? I talked to my friend.
No.
She's in another state. She worked in one of those units of, that was testing positive. And I asked her how she was handling the PPEs, the personal protective equipment. She described what they were doing, and it was an atrocity. I didn't say anything to her. Later, she says she tested positive and got sick. And she goes, but Johnette, I was wearing 3 masks.
Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh. This is
This
why
is a nurse.
I know. I know it's a nurse. I'm just,
They
yeah.
know better.
Yeah. Well, supposedly they're supposed to know better. I'm a fitness trainer. I don't have a medical background, but I've been studying wellness and the health and the body for 20 years. And this is madness. I was just like looking at that mask. I'm like, this is madness, but yes. Is there anything else you want to say about that before we go on to the V?
I think maybe something will come up if we don't have to be totally organized. It'll be oh yeah, I wanted to say this, so we can move on.
Comes up. Yeah.
Yep.
Okay, so the last thing I want to talk about is the V, the special experimental injection, because for those of you watching, that this V is an emergency use only. It is not fully approved. A V normally takes 7 to 8 years before it's fully approved. This is why even the CDC says that you cannot mandate this V because it is for emergency use only, which what in the world does that even mean? I mean, I've watched things and read things that they have tested this on animals, and a lot of the animals have died, and now they're letting people take it, and they don't know the short and long-term effects of this. And then I hear that it's a gene therapy, which I'm like, what the heck does that mean? And so what are your thoughts on this?
We're entering into very unknown territory. and there's fear attached to that. And we've got to watch ourselves that we don't become afraid like what the fear was when this first started. And that's been my desire, to keep trying to tell people we've got to stay calm. We've got to really trust our immune systems. This is a new era, so we really don't know how it is going to affect our immune systems or what to do. And doctors are being censored who are trying to find ways to protect ourselves from the effects of this V.
Yeah.
Because it's two-way. It's not only those who are getting it, but those who are around those who are getting it. Doctors' offices are closing their doors to people who have had the V in offices where they have pregnant women, because they're finding an increase in miscarriages associated with this. And they're starting to do some studies on this, and going back to the studies of the animals, where the ovaries and the clotting mechanisms were disrupted in those animals using these ingredients that's in the V. And so human beings are being affected by that who did not take that injection, as well as those who have. I'm out in the home right now, and in my little world, I'm experiencing several people that I've had to send to the hospital. It will probably never be attributed to the V, but many of them were.
They have it and taken it?
Yes, they've
Okay.
taken it. And they've been very happy that they've taken it when I've come out to interview them to get them started with some help in the home. And said, it's okay. I've had mine. And I'm going, oh dear, oh dear.
They don't understand what they're even saying, what that is, which makes me
and I almost don't want to hug them. I almost don't want to be near them, because it's a two-way street apparently that's going on, that people associated with those who have had the V are getting symptomatic. Some are actually showing up with blood clots, increased periods with clots.
That's the one I've heard, yeah.
And that, and that has to do with that female thing. Well, the studies I'm learning, I keep trying to get research of what is trying to come out to educate us on this. Some of the studies on the animals, they targeted the female, and it was rats. And actually in, what was it, the 1980s in Australia, I think they were doing some work to try to depopulate the rats, and they couldn't shoot enough of them, so they used a bioweapon and injection to inject a few of the rats who would transmit to other rats to sterilize them, and to would bleed out, and I'm not sure exactly all the accuracy of it, but then it actually would go to like 3 generations of the rats, but it would be self-limiting, so it wouldn't go beyond that. And so that's the studies that they were doing back in the 1980s.
Wow.
And so this is nothing new, but it's just human beings that are being affected by it. So it is very scary, and yet many people, there's Israel's injected over 50% of their population. We're not hearing history. I'm hearing little inklings of news that there's a lot of sickness going on and a lot of death going on. Here in Hawaii, I guess we've had a lot of people that have been injected. And I'm boosting my immune system even more and trying to find out what else will help to mitigate the exposure from the V people.
Yeah.
And the other thing that's a little bit concerning is our travels, because they're showing up with, and they're calling them V accidents. They're having mini strokes. They're having little mini strokes. And I had a friend who was just barely missed an accident on the highway between Kona and Ocean View.
Yeah.
The guy went over the line, hit the other car. My friend was right behind him. They stopped to try to render aid. And the guy who went over the line was over there in his right mind. Do you know what happened? I have no idea, he says. And he's not drugged, he's not alcohol, he's not, he's in his right mind. My friend asked, can you put your hazard lights on? He did it right away. It seemed like there was a loss of something. But throughout the United States, they're starting to see more and more people.
And do you know if that person had the V? Do you know if that person had the V or not, or was masked?
Don't know. We wonder.
My friend in that same area was saying that she's been hearing a lot more sirens for accidents. And she thinks it's because people are masked and they're not getting all the oxygen that they need, and they're maybe getting lightheaded when they're driving. And
that's certainly a possibility.
Yeah, so that's what her thoughts are on that, because she's down in that area as well.
And it didn't highly increase in the last year with the mask use.
Yeah.
I don't recall it being there because I travel that highway 2 or 3 times a week.
Yeah, and the guys for watching who don't know the Big Island, it's a 1 lane, and it's literally a highway, 1 lane through the mountains and stuff. So it's very sketchy, and you really need to be alert.
Yes, you have to be alert. It's a fun drive, but
beautiful.
There's been an increase in accidents, notably by all of us who travel that. I can't believe we've seen 3 ambulances going back and forth.
Yeah.
3 different times in a day. That's, that hardly ever happened during this last year.
Mm-hmm.
But since the V has happened in the last 2 or 3 months.
I see.
I'd have to look at the statistics. I don't know what the actual statistics are, so I don't know the accuracy, but it's my opinion and my feeling that it has escalated greatly.
Yeah.
And there is some studies going on throughout the United States, in the continental area, that there's an increase as well since the V has happened. And they're expecting that they're having mini strokes, a moment of where the brain turns off. You don't know what you're doing. You run into somebody, and they're calling it the VA accident.
Got it.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, well, I'd love to just end with some positive things that people can do. I want to just share about the 6 feet. One thing to understand about our energy: we are frequency beings, and our heart energy, our body energy, goes out 6 feet. And so, when we are in close proximity to somebody else, and it's closer than 6 feet, what's actually happening is your thoughts and your emotions are a frequency. They're connecting with that person's thoughts and emotions, and the frequency of both of your bodies, because you're close, connects and actually creates a frequency together. So this is what happens naturally with people who are connecting, and this is why it feels so good when we're hugging, because our vibrational frequencies are hugging and our bodies are hugging. But also just being in proximity with each other, having a conversation, your thoughts and your emotions are connecting to create a whole frequency of itself. And that's a whole different topic. But what I have been told, and I don't have the research around this, but what I've been told is that when your frequency is around, your body is around someone with the V, that it cannot connect the same way. So that frequency ends up coming back into your body, and it ends up being an issue for your own body. Now, I don't know the exact, there's no scientific proof about that I know of, but I do understand emotional frequency. And so one thing that you can do around that's positive is you are in control of your own body. So one thing you can do is I like to put my hands on my heart before I leave the house, or if I'm going to be around anybody who's got the V, and I just tell my frequency, my body, you are kept safe, and you do not connect with anybody who has the V in a frequency energetic way. You only connect with those who don't have the V in a healthy way, and those people who do have the V, you connect with them in a healthy way and keeping the boundary of light around my body. So that's one thing that I do with energetically with that. And then the other thing I do is, like you were saying, Jonette, is boost your immune system. We're talking I take vitamin D3 every day, vitamin C, cracked cell chlorella. I detox my body with detoxidine, clean filtered water, good fresh fruits and vegetables, exercise. There's so much. Getting in the sun, breathing fresh air. Anything else that you want to share about how ways to boost your immune system, or anything else you want to share about what we've talked about?
Well, this will give me a chance to speak about spiritual things that I am involved in, and that is that I'm a follower of Jesus, who died on the cross for our sins and rose again, and was victorious over the grave, and wants to give us eternal life. And he wants to send the Holy Spirit in us. Now, part of what you have expressed physiologically actually happens spiritually for those who decide that they want the Holy Spirit to come inside. And so I do something similar, but it has that extra component of Holy Spirit, fill me so full that whatever comes near me has to go away, and I get to give good stuff to them. And so I overcome by the blood of the Lamb and by the word of my testimony that He is in me, and He's going to overpower whatever else is out there that's negative. So that's a little, that's real similar to what you're talking about, in terms of, I'm not going to let things that I'm going to take authority over my body. I add that thing of allowing God to come in and take over my body, because all He is good. So that's what's going to exude out of me is good if I allow that to happen. The other thing is they've done scientific studies on what your brain does. If your brain is thinking, speaking, or you're acting in negative ways, it's going to drop your immune system, and things are going to die. And they've done studies on plants. And I remember 25 years ago, at least, they were doing that because we were, nurses were taking all these continuing education courses to learn how to best create an environment for somebody to heal physiologically. And we were supposed to take care of the mental, emotional, spiritual, and physical needs of every patient we get. And so we'd do study, we'd go to conferences. And one of the ones was they took a group of students and they put them in two different rooms, and they had the rooms completely controlled with the temperature, etc., moisture, and they had plants in there. They asked the group of students to go into one of them and speak negative things over those plants. Go into the other one and speak positive things over the plants. And over the course of just a few weeks of doing that, the plants that got spoken to positively, they didn't touch them, they didn't do anything else, just spoke positively. Those plants thrived, the others died.
Yep.
Then they did another experiment of going in there and thinking negative thoughts, not saying a word, and thinking positive thoughts, not saying a word. Same thing happened. The plants that the group of students thought things horrible about them died, and the other ones thrived. Wow. So our thoughts and our words are powerful.
Yep.
And just our very idea of speaking life and love in your environment, thinking life and love over yourself and over people.
Yes.
Will boost your immune system. It will create an environment for very, very possible of staying healthy and thriving.
Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. Well, I'd love to finish with, I call it a visualization, a guided visualization, and some people can call it a prayer or whatever works for you, whatever name you want to call it, that's fine. But if you would join me, Jeanette, just kind of put your hands on your heart. And those of you guys watching the video, just put your hands on your heart and take a deep breath. And just notice right now that your heart is beating itself. Your heart was the first organ created in your mother's womb. And your heart right now is beating a gallon of blood through your body per minute without a to-do list on your part. Right now, your body just automatically took another breath. Your body is breathing itself in this moment. In this moment, there's a billion processes happening over and over again per second in the cells of your body right now, all without a to-do list on your part. You are totally taken care of. In this moment, you are safe. Give yourself permission to feel the frequency of safety, feel the emotion of peace, of ease, and of absolute vibrant health. And just feel a beautiful white light that surrounds your body. And this white light is filled with so much love and appreciation, compassion, and absolute understanding of what you've gone through over these last year and a half. Absolute understanding and total compassion for your life journey. And now send this frequency of love, of peace, of understanding, and of compassion out to your home and touching anybody who's in the house, in the building that you're in. And start to send that out down your neighborhood, down your road, touching all people, all sentient beings that are needing a little bit of faith, a little bit of hope, a little bit of strength, a little bit of love and compassion right now. And now feel that frequency going down throughout your town or your city, touching all of the people in your town, in your city that are needing a little bit of hope. And noticing that that frequency starts to go out like a wave of the ocean, starts to go out to all of the cities and towns in your state or your province, touching all people as it starts to wrap around the planet, touching all people and filling them up with the frequency of love, of understanding, and of absolute compassion for their journey. Sending them total appreciation for being here at this time in history, sending them strength from the infinite creator that has created all things. You can call it God, source, infinite creator, whatever works in your heart. And now seeing the whole planet as a white light that is beaming out a frequency of peace and of harmony, of safety, of faith, of hope, of love, and of compassion for all sentient beings on this planet, and emanating out a frequency that this planet is free, this planet is at peace, all people are in harmony with each other, all people are unified under the one umbrella of humanity, of love for each other, of vibrancy, of health, and of healing this planet from fear, of healing this planet from anything that no longer serves it, that is not a vibrational frequency with love, with compassion, with truth, and with the absolute knowing that we are always kept safe and that we are being guided by the one infinite creator that guides an acorn out of the soil and becomes a huge oak tree. Breathing into the body right now, noticing your body is still breathing itself, noticing your heart is still beating itself, and you are absolutely 100% taken care of. Taking a deep breath, and when you're ready, slowly open your eyes. Jeanette, thank you so much for joining me. It was such a pleasure to interview you today, and thank you so much for the work you're doing down south. I appreciate you so much.
Pray for us. We need a lot of help, but we are fearfully and wonderfully made, and that is so true.
Amen to that. Yes, awesome. So if you like this video, please hit subscribe and also comment. Let me know how you guys felt, what your comments are, and I'd love to see that. And much aloha and much mahalo to you. Aloha.